Bine ați venit la Comitetul Olimpic Sportiv Român. Este o zi specială pentru mine și colegii mei din Ministerul Afacerilor Externe, dar și pentru toți partenerii din comunitatea reprezentanților diplomatice prezente la București, precum și cei din federațiile sportive și seria de parteneri care pentru prima oară după o pauză de 2 ani au contribuit la realizarea evenimentului care servește ca, dacă vreți, aproape pretext pentru această discuție, care are propria sa importanță într-un context fără precedent pentru Europa și regiunea noastră, în contextul în care aproape orice domeniu al existenței noastre stă sub
field of our existence is under the sign of a violent, unprovoked war, which daily takes the life of innocent people in Ukraine, a war that has started in the shape that we see today since February, but in actuality it's a continuous war since 2014, and which, as we will see in the discussions that are to follow, it has not left in any shape or form a person that is directly or indirectly affected. We will be speaking about sport and society, about sport and war. We will be speaking about the manner in which institutions, communities, people are trying to find elements of solidarity and resilience in order to continue in the context where a war is taking place and to imagine what can be done afterwards. And what a better sign to do so than the news that made the news and the sports program for yesterday, when Spain, Portugal and Ukraine have announced that they will suggest to host together the World Football Championship of 2030. This is not just a gesture of solidarity. It's first and foremost an act of imagination for what it means to have peace and to return to that type of competition and interaction between clubs, people and communities, where a society that is based on norms, international relations based on rules will allow. This is exactly what is at play in the conflict that Russia has brought to our region, that Russia is bringing it in the middle of Ukrainian society. We have all seen the bombardment of last night on civil residential people who are dying innocently every day and every night. And this is atrocious. But on this background, we will not be speaking just about the war. As I said, we will be speaking as a main focus the sport field. For 2 years during the pandemic, the MAE Cup, which is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Cup, was not possible to organize. We came back this year in a first edition that was moved for autumn. Next year we'll go back to spring. We will go back to that event that is the essence of old sportsmanship, which is to bring all the diplomatic corps from the colleagues from the central of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to share that joy of life, to share those values that make out of sport this fascinating dimension of human activity that unites, that builds friendship, and that, yes, indeed, creates competition, but it's a competition based on rules and based on shared values. This is why it is a great pleasure for me to provide now and give the microphone to Mr. Mihai Covaliu, the president of the COSR, who's also the generous host for today. President, you have the microphone. Thank you very much. General Manager, State Secretary, Your Excellency, Ambassador, Mr. Under State Secretary, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and Presidency of the Sports Athlete Federation, Secretary General, dear colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, honored guests, it is a special pleasure for us to be able to host here today in the Olympic Hall this event and to be able to speak about what it means to have solidarity in difficult times. We are all experiencing very interesting and very difficult moments. We're coming after a time period that is, again, very, where we had a lot of hardship. And now we have the opportunity here to speak about something that is taking place, something that is taking place in this time period, which is the level of solidarity. And if there is something that can unite people in these very, very difficult times, that is the Olympic spirit. I do remember that I have left from the Olympic Games in Beijing, and in the last day, together with the General Secretary, we were saying goodbye to the President of the Olympic Committee from Ukraine, Mr. Sergei Bubka, and we were all wondering how we will be able to handle the time period that was to come. This war started, this unjust war, and here obviously in Romania we are very close to this unjust war. However, we managed through solidarity to come to the support of those that looked for a respite here in Romania, and for that I'd like to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the collaboration that we've maintained, for the channels that we've managed to open, so that all of the requests that came from our colleagues in Ukraine to be able to come to their support and to find very quickly a solution if there's an issue. I remember at the beginning of this crisis how I received a phone call somewhere around 11 o'clock at night from a huge athlete, Olga Harlan, from Ukraine, an athlete that was in Italy training, and she said she's going to land in Romania in the morning of the next day at 7 o'clock in Sibiu, and that she needs help to support her and to recover her family from Ukraine. Together with the General Secretary and a group of colleagues, we decided to design a team that immediately went to Sibiu to pick up Olga. We went through the border. There they met the family in Chernovsky, and the sister and her nephew managed to come back with Olga, but her parents decided to stay there, back in Ukraine. The mother and the father of Olga stayed in Ukraine and chose to spend all this time period there. This is something that we at the beginning were not aware of, but afterwards we kind of realized that there's an emotion and an incredible event. Many of these little stories took place by the thousands. As you can see on the screen, we have decided to select a part of the pictures by which we've managed to get involved. Here are some images from Ukraine. We've managed to maintain the connection with the Ministry of Sports from there, with Mr. Vadim Gutsai, former sword and fence athlete, with basically very emotional images for me. And we've managed together with the Red Cross to come in support for the athletes in Ukraine. We have opened the gates for the Olympic base in Izvoran. We prepared athletes there from sambo, from athletics federation, from the basketball, the Olympic team from canoe and kayak, and they got ready in the sports bases in Snagov. And together with the president of the Ukrainian Olympic Committee, Sergei Bubka, whom I'm convinced you are all more than familiar with, we were there in a visit, and we decided to salute all of them. And Sergei had a very, very beautiful message for them. He encouraged them. He sent them the fact that the international Olympic movement is supporting the projects that the International Olympic Committee has dedicated to, and which Sergei Bubka has coordinated for the support of the Romanian athletes. About 3,000 people who were the beneficiaries of this support, which so far is 7.5 million dollars. Also, the Olympic Committee has allocated a sum of €500,000 in order to support the sports events and elements of that nature that managed to be trained all over Europe. So there were action. We are still in contact with the Olympic Committee and the ministry, and everything that it means support that is granted to the sports movement and Olympic elements that we can help, we will help. So there are moments in which we must come to the aid of those that are here. And sports is creating those bridges. It's the common language all over the land. And sports can tumble these walls that certain nations are trying to kick down. But friendship, mutual respect, and fair play will always transcend over these issues. We will succeed, maybe even sooner, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to get involved in all of the actions that will come on behalf of the Olympic Committee, with the Ministry of Sports, and for any requests that our colleagues in Ukraine might have, we will always answer it presently in order to help.
Mulțumesc, domnule președinte. Thank you, Mr. President. Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, you've arrived relatively recently to Bucharest, so you've witnessed in the past couple of months the response that Romanian society, as President Covaliu has just mentioned, the solidarity and open-heartedness that the Romanian society has shown the Ukrainian people. But you're also involved in the bilateral effort to support Ukraine in its hour of need. So with that, it is my pleasure to invite you to take the floor. Mr. Ambassador.
Mr. Director General, Mr. State Secretary, Mr. President of the Olympic Committee, Mr. Undersecretary, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. First, I would like to thank the organizers and hosts of this morning's event and recall the origin of this meeting. It originated from the discussion that we had a while ago at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Romania, looking into possibilities of highlighting the topic of solidarity with Ukraine against the background of ongoing Russia's war against my country. And I'm very pleased that the ideas that were discussed then they came to fruition, they came to realization, and this roundtable discussion was one of them. For Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, solidarity is not a general notion. It has a very practical meaning. The solidarity helps Ukrainians to defend themselves, to defend the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country against an unprovoked and unjust war of aggression from the Russian Federation. A war of choice. It did not have to happen. It was a decision taken by one person or a very small group of persons in one place in Moscow. And it brought about an enormous suffering and destruction on the Ukrainian nation. But I will say more, that we are witnessing not only this war, but a turning point for Europe. Because from now on, among many values that are shared by the European people, it will also be the value of solidarity that matters a lot to everyone. The war continues, and this war has a profound impact on different aspects of life in Ukraine. And sports is not an exception. It has impacted sports and athletes in Ukraine in many different ways. Many Ukrainian athletes and coaches volunteers to join the defense forces of Ukraine to defend the country. At least 3,000 athletes and sportsmen are in the defense forces. Unfortunately, some of them were killed in the battle. Some were captured. Another very significant area of impact is the impact on the training possibilities for our athletes. Many of them were not able to continue training in Ukraine and had to move to other countries, to other training grounds. Many training facilities and sports centers in the country, in Ukraine, were destroyed by Russian attacks. I will use this opportunity to note that the overwhelming majority of attacks that are carried out by the Russian forces, be it by artillery or by missiles, are carried out against civilian infrastructure. And therefore, largely it is the civilians who bear the burden of this war, and the destruction affects significantly the sports infrastructure in the country. At the beginning of last month, of September, the cost of destruction of sports facilities in Ukraine was estimated at $160 million. That was a very, very approximate estimate of the cost of this destruction. But it is not only the facilities. The athletes or the young people who continue to stay in Ukraine, they are very significantly affected by the ongoing war, because it's difficult to undertake normal training exercises, say for young children, but also for older athletes. Again, very often we would have air raid alerts in the country, entire territory, and people are obligated to seek shelter. So for the young people, it is now the requirement that the shelters must be no more than 500 meters from the training facility. And this is an obligatory requirement which affects the training program for everyone. Saying that, I want to specifically thank our Romanian hosts for great support that was extended to Ukrainian sportsmen, to men and women, to Ukrainian athletes from the very first days of this big war. Many of them found the possibilities to continue their training on the territory of Romania. Romania also hosted some of the events which were originally designed to take place on the territory of Ukraine. One of such recent events which was organized in Romania and where I took part together with a colleague from the sports ministry. It was a football tournament of teams of Ukrainian diaspora from different countries. Traditionally, this tournament took place in Ukraine every year around the Independence Day of Ukraine. This year, the Football Association also of Romania kindly agreed to provide facilities to host this event. It was very important to us, and all the teams who participated and could continue with this tradition. I would also very briefly touch upon the issue of the impact of this war on the international sports events. You probably know the recommendation that was issued by the International Olympic Committee in February, immediately after the start of this all-out war, to suspend and bar participation of Russian athletes in international competitions. We strongly believe that this position must continue to be maintained. It is only just and fair that such restrictions remain in place as Russia continues to violate every basic principle of international law, of humanistic values, of the Olympic movement, and so many suffering and deaths are brought onto Ukrainian people and Ukrainian land. We do believe that it is necessary to maintain isolation of the Russian sports and Russian athletes from the international cooperation, suspension of their participation in international federations meetings, or acquiring any positions of influence within the international federations. It is important that the ban on participation of Russian and Belarusian athletes is maintained. We hear that there are some calls for them to renew participation under neutral flags. We believe that it must not happen. The calls for making or the Olympic principle of sports beyond politics is the right one, but it doesn't work for Russia. It was not a principle they maintained or observed when they introduced a gigantic state-run doping program in Russia, which basically was the original reason why their athletes were made to participate under the neutral flags. They went further. They now staged an enormous war in Europe against a sovereign nation. And again, the international community responded with further measures, including in the sports arena. And for us it is important that these measures are to be maintained until the time when the circumstances that led to the introduction of these measures are removed, which means that Russia must stop its war against Ukraine, that Russia must remove its armed forces from the Ukrainian territory back to the territory of the Russian Federation, and compensate for all the destruction that it caused on the Ukrainian territory. Again, that will be just and fair. And this is also about these ideals that we all need to maintain and promote. And I will conclude now by highlighting the issue of reconstruction and this joint offer of conduct of the World Cup 2030 in Portugal, Spain and Ukraine. We do trust that the war will finish before then. We will be engaged in a very big effort of reconstruction in the country, and approval of the conduct of the World Cup, including in Ukraine, will be a very strong incentive to making a successful reconstruction effort, including in the sports sector. So we will continue to rely on solidarity of our international partners, on solidarity and support of our Romanian friends, and I have full confidence that we will win this war and will re-establish peace, stability and security in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Andrei Novak, Secretary of State from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Romania. Domnule Secretar de Stat, aveți cuvântul.
Mulțumesc. Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, Your Excellencies, domnule președinte, domnule secretar de stat, domnule director, doamnelor și domnilor.
Its Secretary, Director, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, this conference devoted on the impact of the war on Ukraine over sport is in a very difficult context for us, given that after this break caused by the pandemics, the CUP organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was reinstated as one of the most traditional events with a great impact on the public policy of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Romania. It is also true that in this context, this unjust and unjustified aggression of Russia over Ukraine, an aggression that caused a series of problems which are founded on the murder and crime against an independent society. In such a context, this country has to cope with a situation that hasn't been around since the end of the Second World War. Romania is a country that strongly opposed and strongly challenged in the firmest terms the aggression that Russia launched against Ukraine. We feel that sports, because this is our topic today, is a field that can have a set of value that can positively develop contemporary societies. Sports can lead to democratic progress, and in no way can sports lead to aggression and to murder or a crime against an independent society in our contemporary years. That's why what Russia is doing as of late, trying to annex territories that do not belong to it using referenda, and all these are challenged internationally by the statements or the declarations made by the President of Romania, by the Prime Minister of Romania. And Romania calls on other states to agree to it, because in a contemporary society such things should have never existed. And I'm thinking about the crisis as of late, and I'm thinking also the very good cooperation that we had with the Romanian Football Federation when we had to bring to Romania a Romanian athlete that was stuck in Ukraine during the war. I spoke with this guy on the phone times, and I realized how terrified he was because of what he had to live through, and how terrified he was because of what this war entailed, not only for him but for the entire Ukrainian nation. I'd like to commend the Romanian society for the support it extended to the Romanian nationals in this crisis. And all things came naturally, and that made me believe that we have a chance for these to end, as the ambassador was saying. And I can believe that this war can end and put an end to similar situations. Now, coming back to sports, war didn't only affect the human resource, which is most important in my opinion. It also recalled on the sports infrastructure that had already suffered because of the pandemic in 2019 and 2020. In this context, as the ambassador was saying, the reconstruction of Ukraine, lato senso, because of the damages caused by the Russians, require significant report effort to remodel, to implement the frameworks for the operation of the state in a democratic spirit. The construction of a society where the rights of all nationals, regardless of any discrimination grounds, could be observed, and that must be the main goal of the of the reconstruction process in Ukraine. And this is a process for which Romania extends and shall extend a lot of efforts. I would like to thank the Romanian Olympic and Athletic Committee for the invitation they extended to me this morning. I'm very glad that your CAP at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is now continued, and in my opinion, sports can lead to very important progress in society. I strongly believe that cooperating closely with the Romanian Athletic Committee and the federations of Romania are a matter of priority for us. In the short and in the long term, in my mind, the international events will always or can always rely on us. I mean, we will always support your initiatives, and thank you very much for all. Thank you very much, State Secretary.
I'll switch to English. I don't know if you have already the connection, but it is my pleasure to introduce Andrei, who's Deputy Minister of Youth and Sports of Ukraine for European integration, who will join us online. Do we have the link? Minister, you have the floor.
Mulțumesc. Bună dimineața tuturor din Kiev. That is all I can say in Romanian, so I will continue in English. Good morning to everyone, dear participants of the conference. First of all, I would like, on behalf of the Ukrainian sport community, thank for the support for my country and Ukrainian sport, in particular during this horrible time of the Russian military aggression. I would like just to add to the words said by distinguished Mr. Kovaliu, President of the Romanian Olympic and Sport Committee, that in solidarity with the Ukrainian national sport teams, Romanian sport community provided great opportunity for the training and competition. Speaking about the competitions, it was the support for Ukrainian national fencing, wrestling, diving, and table tennis teams. When we are speaking about the possibility to stay, we really appreciate the help of the Romanian Olympic and Sport Committee, as well as other sport community stakeholders who made it possible for our teams in cycling, triathlon, weightlifting, canoeing, as well as judo, to train and to prepare for the competitions in Romania. Dear participants, the heroic struggle of Ukrainian people against armed aggression of the Russian Federation, supported by Belarus, has been going on for more than 7 months now. Every citizen of Ukraine makes every effort to fight the enemy in order to approach our victory. Athletes of the national teams, as well as coaches, trainers, and other representatives of the Ukrainian sport movement, defend our independence in the Ukrainian Defense Forces. At this very moment, millions of Ukrainians are still under a barrage of Russian bombing, and thousands have lost their lives. We know that as a result of this terrible war, the Ukrainian sports community has already lost 151 young and brave people. Russian troops have destroyed 22 sport facilities and damaged 113 sport objects in regions of Ukraine. Despite these facts, Ukrainian athletes continue to represent our country with dignity on international sports arenas and win awards in a fair competition. Meanwhile, the aggressor country continues to violate the fundamental principles and inalienable values of the Olympic Charter that advocates for a peaceful society and preservation of human dignity. Under such circumstances, sport cannot be considered out of politics today, as athletes and coaches are public figures who represent their countries in the international sport community or participate in advertising and promotional campaigns. Moreover, it is well known that sport in Russia and Belarus is routinely weaponized as a powerful propaganda tool to promote and support repressive political regimes in these countries. It is also worth noting that every 6 of Russia's 214 athletes competing at the Winter Olympics 2022 in Beijing was a member of the Russian armed forces. The same army that routinely shells Kiev, Kharkiv, Lviv, Mykolaiv, Sumy, and other Ukrainian cities commits heinous war crimes, carries out acts of horrific violence against civilians. Thus, as never before, we need to consolidate the efforts of all international partners to stop this aggression. I am convinced that we must demonstrate the unity of the sports movement in combating any military aggression that undermines the international legal order. With this in mind, I appeal to continue further sanction pressure in order to suspend Russian and Belarusian sport national governing bodies from international sport federations. We should remove all individuals aligned to the Russian and Belarusian states from positions of influence on international sport federations, such as boards and organizing committees. We should stop the broadcast of sport competitions into Russia and Belarus. We should prohibit the participation of representatives of the aggressors' countries, even in neutral status. I would like to stress last point regarding so-called neutrality. Sport must never be allowed to share the lie that its strength lies in neutrality. Its strength lies in its truly global influence, its spirit of unity and peace, and its confident promotion of the very best of our shared values. Thus, there is no place for so-called neutral lie in contemporary sport. I would like to remind you that now Ukraine is on the border not only between East and West, it is a border between war and peaceful life of European people. And the peaceful life in Europe and world depends on our joint actions. I ask you, dear colleagues, to support Ukraine to remain a powerful sports state, and for the Ukrainian people to be in a family of peaceful European nations. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. In that spirit, yesterday, Katerina Sadurska, a Ukrainian freediver, won gold medal. So as the ambassador said, as the minister just mentioned, human resilience in sport goes through this despite the circumstances that families, teammates, a whole national infrastructure of sport is destroyed to keep going, stronger, higher. It's this Olympic spirit that animates ultimately our societies. And with that in mind, it is my pleasure to invite the last speaker of the first panel, Domnul Radu Antohi, Under-Secretary of State for Sports at the Ministry of Sports of Romania, to present his remarks, but also the conclusion to our first panel. Minister, you have the floor. Domnule Ministru, aveți cuvântul.
Bună dimineața. Mulțumesc mult pentru invitație.
Good morning all. Thank you for your invitation. President, State Secretary, Under-State Secretaries, Director. It's going to be difficult for me to add more, having a series of speakers that are very well prepared, who are also very well involved in the movement to aid the Ukrainian athletes and their activities. But I can say how we saw it from within the Ministry of Sports the first days of conflict of Ukraine. there were days with a very unpleasant surprise to see that war beginning with the Romanian athletes that were in the middle of the bombardments, with Ukrainian athletes that needed help, and we had to help them because they're our colleagues, they're human beings just like us. And I think I received the second day a phone call from the General Secretary of the COSR, the Olympic Committee. Then the rest of the federation, who also, they themselves got involved in saving athletes from Ukraine, the Romanian Football Federation, the canoe, weightlifters, fencing, so on and so forth. They all took an appeal to the Olympic Committee in Romania to help them. I'm going to talk to you about the 52 athletes of the Ukrainian canoe team. They arrived that night. And the very next day, when we went to see how they are, to visit them, to make sure that they're fine, they were already training the next morning. There were days where the villages or cities that they were coming from, bombardments were taking place, so in the moment of the morning, they knew nothing about their family. But they said, no, sport is the most important point right now, because then we want to show that Ukraine is an independent nation and that they gained the right to sit amongst all nations that are sovereign and independent, and they won that right. There are many, many inspiring stories. There are athletes who managed to inspire Romanian athletes from here and show that no matter how tough it looks, to labor and to be focused will always aid you, especially when they're fighting this war against the aggressor, and that their independence will be here. So, as I said, I don't think they were expecting, perhaps, that to find so much support in Romania. I know that civil society in Romania organized immediately in the first 48, 72 hours they were at the border with Ukraine. Then all sports structures undertook all the steps that they could in order to receive the athletes, to put at their disposal training camps, to make sure that all things can run as smoothly as possible, so that Ukraine can continue the route in international competitions, and to show that they're a country of great people, and that the peace must arrive and the aggressor must back down, and we will continue to move forward. On our behalf, for every request that came on behalf of the Ministry of Sports and Youth in Ukraine, or the Ukrainian Embassy, or anybody that was involved in the movement to aid the Ukrainians, we've always been open for them. With the understanding of our Olympic teams, we've managed to put at their disposal locations in order to house Ukrainian refugees. Everybody has sacrificed. Everybody has seen the need to help. We've all seen what it means to get involved, the need to not stand aside, because in rough times, those times that Ukraine is going through, they need to see, they need to understand that there are friends that will always support, and that they will be with them shoulder by shoulder. We will stay here. We will continue to be involved together with the Sports Federation and the Romanian Olympic Committee, and for every step that they need our aid, we will be present, and we will do so after this point. We will aid the Ukrainian athletes after this war ends, to make sure that things will be better than they were before, and to move forward and show that peace is by far the only point that matters. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Undersecretary. With that, please allow me to thank once again the panelists of this first component of our discussion. Mr. Andrei Novak, State Secretary, Mr. Mihai Covaliu, from the COSR, Mr. Andrei Chesnokov, Deputy Minister of Youth and Sports of Ukraine, for European Integration, Radu Antochi, Undersecretary of State with the attribution in the field of sports, and Mr. Igor Propokchuk, Ambassador of Ukraine in Romania. We will have a very short technical break to exchange the components of the panel. But before that, please, let's thank our panelists for this part of the discussion.
Well, we're switching not only panels, schimbăm nu doar panel, ci și
We're not only switching panels, but please,
panel, ci și poate
but perhaps also the manner in which we're going to discuss. We're going to invite you to be more interactive for the second component, because just as His Excellency Ambassador Prokopchuk was mentioning, we want a debate, a sort of a round table on this topic, and to be able to do so,
să rog doar colegii să schimbe călăreții de pe masă.
I'm going to ask the colleagues to exchange the names from the hall. We will have people that have been directly involved, that were witnesses, that were present in one way or another, either in the active sports life from Ukraine, or they represented bridgeheads between the two societies, or they were witnesses for these last 7 months that the Ukrainian societies and indirectly the Ukrainian society as a whole experienced. So it is a great pleasure of me to have next to me, to have Mr. Vadim Gilta, photojournalist, who was for months, starting in February, present in Ukraine, Madam Anastasia Pitpalova, who is a handball player in the multi-awarded Olympic athlete, who for many, many years was part of a team that was also a Romanian team, so Chimia Râmnicu Vâlcea handball team. And I remember Nica Polikalivka from Vâlcea, and what passion was in that team at that moment. And then Răzvan Raț, who needs no introduction, you obviously know him, neither in Romania nor in Ukraine, you all know who he is. Captain of the Romanian football team, player for Shakhtar Donetsk for many, many years, a team with which he won some of the most representative European cups and games. His personal life is very tied to Ukraine because he's the father of a 12-year-old girl who was born and raised in Ukraine, whose wife is a citizen of Ukraine, and who gave a part of his youth and life to this wonderful sports relation between the two neighboring countries and truly friendship countries. And last but not least, Florin Shari, who's responsible for public policies and social responsibilities, CSR, and a partner of the MAE Cup and the Romanian Football Federation, for which we would like to thank him. So, for this Foreign Affairs Open, I want this discussion to be as interactive as possible, so I will open this for questions in the hall, and I will start Vadim, specifically because he doesn't speak as an athlete, he doesn't speak as a representative of the federation here. He speaks with the clear eye of the journalist. And Vadim Gilda is a journalist who is known not just for the international awards that he has received, not just for the image that reached the front page of New York Times or the CNN website, that have been part of the visual aid of some photojournalism all over the world, but because his reputation of journalism neutrality, of accuracy, it just makes everything in a field where fake news, propaganda takes root, and a certain type of pseudo-journalism is unfortunately replacing our needs, citizen needs, to be truly informed. Vadim is one of the people who was one of the people who suffered what his colleagues from the press and the citizens of Ukraine suffered in those difficult months. So, Vadim, you have the microphone, and of course he doesn't give him the microphone. Sorry to interrupt. The images that you have seen in the screen, those are Vadim's images from the very first part of the year, which show, first and foremost, the human side of this giant tragedy, an unjustified, unprovoked war that the Russian Federation is carrying against Ukraine as a state and the Ukrainian society as a whole. Thank you very much for your invitation. So, as the previous speaker mentioned, it's very difficult to add any technical details or data related to the level of destruction that is bearing down on Ukraine from the beginning of the war. But what I do want to do is to start by putting a focus on a very important dimension for me, which is the dimension of solidarity. I believe that a good happening, something happy happen in all of this. Three components: diplomacy, sports, and photography or information, that myself I see as a language that unites us, as a language that moves, let's say, beyond the nationalistic, linguistic, or ethnical criteria. We cannot forget that no matter where we are on this earth, we are just one being. And any part of this common being, and nobody stays unaffected. And I've been doing this job for 30 years. With every conflict that I've been a witness of, I dreamt that something like this cannot happen. So I was in that dream state when it came to Ukraine time also, because imagine this, I arrived in Ukraine a month ahead of the war. So in the early dawn of 24th of February, when it became quite clear that the war is starting, I still try to believe deep down that there's just a little escalation of statement that perhaps this cannot happen. I was in Severodonetsk, and you could hear the artillery of the pro-Russian forces hitting the outskirts of the city. And even in those moments, I still hoped that I will hear, oh, it was just a peak of a statement war and that this cannot happen. Unfortunately, we all know very well what followed. And in a way, it's easier for me that these images are rolling on the screen, because I don't think you can describe correctly in words with a sufficiently large impact what is truly taking place there. One point that perhaps is common to all conflicts, but this was for me at a level that is completely different, which is the level of solidarity. The solidarity of the Ukrainian people, which was very underestimated and underscored by most people. And the results can be seen with the naked eye. I feel the need to express gratitude for all these people that you see here in front of you. In the darkest moments of their life, they gave me support, and they were open to the fact that they tolerated my presence as a journalist. Because many times I tried to put myself in their shoes. There are moments where there are people who are trying to embark on these evacuation trains that were leaving Kyiv, and I was wondering, would I be able in that situation to bear somebody with a camera in my face? And furthermore, to help him or to try to support him. There were people, men, who were saying goodbye to their families, that were holding back tears, and they were trying to look strong, even though you could see that their voice were trembling, just like mine is right now. And with tears in their eyes, they were encouraging us for taking photos. And we ourselves were overwhelmed by what we were seeing. Related to sports, I don't think anybody here in this audience needs to have underpin the importance of sports.
No matter what type of sports, the basic idea is just the same. Team sports are building us up, are making us know how important it is to show proof of solidarity for the sake of the entire team. I would like to stress this message once again because many times I have this feeling that in Romania the teamwork is not given its due importance. As Andrei was saying earlier, I would be grateful if you asked me questions because I wouldn't know where to start from. Thank you very much. I think we will hear all speeches and then we will come back to the room for questions. If Anastasia Pitpalova is online, I would like to give her the floor. I don't know if this link can be confirmed.
Bună ziua!
Hello?
Bună ziua tuturor!
Hello to you all.
Bună ziua! Ne face plăcere și
It
mulțumim
is
pentru că
with
ați
great
acceptat
pleasure and we
invitația.
would like to
Știu
thank
că
you for
ați locuit
accepting
și ați
our
jucat
invitation. I
ani
know
de zile
that
la Vâlcea,
you
ca
lived
fiu
many
de
years
vâlcean
and
și
you
ca
played in Vâlcea
om care a
many
început
years.
sportul la Vâlcea, am
I'm
început
also
scrimă la
from
Vâlcea, am
Vâlcea.
început
I started
handbal la
there
Vâlcea,
doing fencing
într-un
and
liceu care era
handball
un liceu cu
in a
nucleu
high
sportiv,
school
chiar dacă
that
eram încă
was
6 ani
devoted to
atunci.
sports. I recall I was only 6 years old then. I know how important it's been for me to play all these sports and I recall how united the Vâlcean community was and how much it cared for sports, and I know what it means for sports in general and for female sports in particular. And I know what this means for international success. This is linked to the force of such a team where you contributed a lot. But today we're tackling particular circumstances, a difficult moment in the life of sports in general and in your own life, in the life of each Ukrainian athlete who today feels the need to go to the army or to seek refuge on a temporary basis such as you. So I'm giving you the floor. I don't know if you're going to speak in English or in Romanian. I know that you know Romanian, but it is with great pleasure that I extend the floor to Ms. Anastasia Pitpalova. Hello once again to you all. I will continue in English because I haven't spoken Romanian in a while.
Hi everybody. I would like to thank to invite me today. Romania always represented for me. It's first of all, it was a great level of handball, great players in my team, and it was just great experience. And I was always supported by the fans and by the people around of me. So when war starts, it was really, really good that Romania stay and support Ukrainian people, me and also my family and so my sister and my friends, because in this moment everybody feel not in security. And I still thanks to my friend Radu Stoyan to help my sister and her daughter in Romania, and I still have a lot of friends who continue every day to help Ukrainian people. You know, I think what Russia do today in Ukraine, it's a genocide of Ukrainian people, and people unfortunately die every day, and we just pray God that it stops as soon as possible. And I hope, I'm from city of Ukraine, and its name of city is Kherson. Kherson is city still occupied by Russians, and it was so difficult to bring my mother in Europe. I live in France today. She live with me for the moment, but I have still family in Kherson, and my father lives there, and some of my friends still live in the city, and I know the life is really, really hard today. And we know that today we have some good news from Ukrainian army, and I hope that as soon as possible they will give a freedom to occupied cities. And I would like to thanks again to Romania to support.
Thank you so much. If you could stay online, we'll come back with a set of questions. But I'm turning to the rest of the panel, and it is my pleasure, and I'll switch to Romanian. Să-l invit să ia cuvântul pe Răzvan Raț.
It is with great pleasure that I give the floor to Răzvan Raț, a football player whose international career, both under the Romanian banner or under very reputed international banners, has progressed as of late. It is with great pleasure that I give the floor because of his almost symbolical role in the relationship between the Romanian society and the Ukrainian one. And I commend Răzvan Raț for his role and for having seen from the beginning the impact of this Russian aggression over Ukraine. You have the floor. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ukrainian Embassy in Romania for for extending this invitation to me. Let me start by saying that I'm half Ukrainian. It's not the first time that I declare it. I've declared it many years ago, because the way Ukrainian received me there was hard to believe. I think we're somewhat biased in Romania, and in general the Europeans are somewhat biased as regards the former Soviet bloc. We feel a bit reluctant to contact them, and we have a wrong opinion on Ukraine. We've entertained it for so long, and it would have been only normal to have such an opinion, because people here have had these opinions. I was very well received in Ukraine. I adjusted very well in Ukraine. I learned their language very quickly. My wife is Ukrainian. My child was born in Donetsk. As you said earlier, I know this country very well. For me, the war started in 2014. It's very hard for me to speak about it because I'm looking at the slideshow of pictures, and I'm looking at the news, and I have a lot of people who have died, friends of mine who have died in this war. It's very hard for me to speak about the war in Ukraine. It's very hard for me to speak about it. And I think during a chat I had with President Covaliu before us going into the room, I think I was saying that I had no intention whatsoever of coming back to Romania. I wanted to continue in Ukraine because I had adjusted so well there. I was like a fish in the water in Ukraine. I was received with respect, with appreciation, and especially in Donetsk, It was incredible how well I was received, and I was enjoying it, every bit of it. But moving on and talking about solidarity, I don't know if it's okay or not to brag about it, but besides Ukrainian athletes and athletes in general, I have helped out former colleagues of mine, colleagues who are also making up the national team, Impactul, for instance. They are my former colleagues. I worked with them directly, and these are people that I helped to come to Romania, at least for the first part of this year. Denis Boico is another friend of mine. He is a goalkeeper at Kiev. Denis is still in Romania with his family, and we are pretty close to his family, our family and his family. Our children play together almost every day. And I think I've had almost permanent contact with the Ukrainian embassy in Romania throughout this period and managed to do a lot of things together. If I recall correctly, 232 was the number of people that I contacted and supported throughout all this period. They were coming from Ukraine, and we were trying to do our best to help them out. We had to secure shelter for them and so on. It's important for us to recall all these things, and in my opinion, we should give this proof of solidarity. For me, football bridges nations and bridges people. We can safely say that we understand what's going on in Ukraine, but as a matter of fact, we cannot grasp it because we are not in their shoes. And let me commend the Ukrainians, as I always do, for their response to this aggression. I find it incredible. When you live in England and then you come to Ukraine on a volunteer basis to join the army and fight for your own country. It's an incredible situation for me, and I think that there isn't a huge number of countries that can brag about it. Yes, thank you very much. We speak about the sports, and we forget how important sports is for our patriotic stance. These men and women fight or play for their own banner, and that's a form of solidarity in itself. It's proof of what unites us and not what divides us. That's why for our last formal address, and as I promised, we will give then the floor to the audience for questions. Mr. Florin Shari, responsible for CSR and public policies at the Romanian Football Federation. I give you the floor, Florin. Thank you very much. I somewhat feel very close to you because this is a context that's somewhat emotional, that we all shared, and we've all had experiences that really mattered for all of us during these past few months. But let me recall as well the institutional steps taken by the Romanian Football Federation during these very difficult times for us all. In 2021, during the summer, the Ukrainian team set camp here for training, and it was something that we greatly enjoyed, because the two matches that were played in Bucharest were the best example of fairness and of what it means to share the joy of playing football. I was coordinating that project in Romania, so when I say together, I really mean together. The football fans that visited Bucharest, coming from Ukraine, and the football fans that came from Northern Macedonia, Switzerland, or France, they lived together this joy of football, and they made us live this joy as well. And then, fast forward on February 2022, we were all shocked by what was going on at the borders of Romania, and we were all shocked by what those people that we had met during the last summer had to go through. The intervention of the Romanian Football Federation had a few stages. We showed proof of resilience and solidarity, and let me thank all institutions that we have cooperated with: the Ukrainian Embassy in Bucharest, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, which is not represented today at this event, the Romanian Olympic and Sports Committee. So let me thank you all for this resilience.
Obviously, the first objective was to save lives, and there were cases where the direct intervention, where the president of the Romanian Football Federation had to accompany those athletes directly at the border through direct interventions, through the support of all other sports people like Răzvan or Mr. Mircea Lucescu, who had a very important contribution. We've managed to do this, I'd say, under honorable conditions for what was taking place. After the last player, Cojocaru, managed to return in the country, I think he was the last one, if I'm not mistaken, then we had the question, okay, what are we going to do next? And this what's next, at the request of the Romanian Football Federation through a FIFA decision, they allowed the players who came through Ukraine to be able to enroll themselves in other clubs to be able to play. So we showed even to the aggressor that life moves on, and it cannot stand in the way of sports and peace. We were thinking that it is very important for us, when we manifest solidarity, to do it in the most concrete manner, and we initiated the project for Football for Life, which had two components: the direct aid component, which was sending food and emergency products. We sent one truck to Cernăuți with the financing that was done on behalf of UEFA. And of course, in this dialogue, for the entirety of these interventions, we were in dialogue with the Ukrainian Football Federation, and to be able to harmonize. But the most important thing, and we have invited in Romania 4 groups of young football players to come and live with their adult belongers, meaning father, mother, doesn't matter, for them to be able to have their classes and to continue to develop. And what we gladly saw is that even here the school continued for them, to allow them to continue to play football. So there are 4 groups, about 120 people. There's a group in Timișoara city, there's another one in Râmnicu Vâlcea, where we also have the support of the local authorities and of local civil society. Our intervention is minimal. We just supplied them with the sports equipment, which was lacking, because when they were coming in February they had winter clothes. And that's when we decided to prepare some equipment with some summer equipment. We have a group at Izvorul Mureșului, and in the Tay Sports Complex, where there's a lot of athletes there. So it's another example of institutions that can and do collaborate. And in the end, it's an experience that we got together. It's a faith that was provided when we had this level of collaboration, because it provided fruits. The Ministry of Sports managed to find housing quite quickly for the refugees, and we were able to ensure them the needed infrastructure in order to work on this point. What we have noticed is that the coming of these youth and athletes has added value for the phenomena of sports. Now, being integrated in Romanian football, they're very good players, and some of the clubs are actually trying to keep them in Romania for the general benefits of the Romanian football society. The assistance that we are granting these clubs is continuing, also with the UEFA and FIFA, and I definitely believe that this is already a very good moment. And I hear with a lot of joy about the initiative to organize the 2030 football championship in this formula, Iberian and Ukrainian. I think it is a very good moment. I think it is a moment where we can think together for the future, for the moment when the war will be over and the aggressor will be repelled. And we will speak about reconstruction, we will speak about sharing new initiatives. Thank you very much for listening to me. I can tell you I'm really nervous because these experiences touch me deeply. I never thought that after the pandemic we will be so quickly in such a situation where you can hear the explosions and you can see people dying around you. But I think the most important lesson is that in the end we are all in this together, and we've managed to show solidarity and to show that there is a future for humanity. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shari. Thank you, Florin. There's a floater or a floating microphone. Please use it. But until that moment, I do have a question for Răzvan and Vadim, because they've both seen this war, not just in this future that we all hope, when it began. The beautiful Donetsk stadium was destroyed under the circumstances that has shown what was to come. So I'm going to ask you both to speak of this, because you were both there, not just from the TV. Well, outside the stadium that was bombarded, and that they have talked about in that respective moment. I think a month ago we received a video from a former sports person from Shakhtar. In that respective video, they how do they pick them up? What was their house, which was, I think, under 500 meters away from the house where I lived, and that I hope is still standing, my home. So he had left Ukraine for quite a long time. He's been living in Spain for nearly 10 years. And he was saying to me that in the house, where we many times sat in his yard, and I could recognize the landscape, but it was completely different. Everything was burning, and his message was quite short. It's good that we're still alive, because fortunately nobody was in the house and nothing more serious than that took place. But his message was very short and very frightening to me, because he was basically happy that he wasn't in the house when the house was bombarded, and that he's still alive, and that he will be able to have enough strength to build another one, and that at one point he will go back to Donetsk. Because there's a lot of people who keep asking me, will you go back into Donetsk? Yes, I do believe Donetsk to be, and I've said that earlier, as a second house to me. Every time I say I haven't been home since 2013, it's strange for a Romanian, or for generally speaking, to say that, but this is what I thought, this is what I felt. Ukraine, Donetsk Oblast, and especially, has given me a lot. It basically gave me everything from a sports, social, and material point of view. My wife is from there. The child is half Ukrainian, obviously. There's no moment where I don't think about what's taking place in Ukraine, and in that moment, what I'm experiencing from February 2014, and those that know me, they know my stories about friends, about people that we know of, the pictures that you have seen here for quite some time. And again, it's very, very difficult to speak about what's happening there, because I've been experiencing this for far too long. And it's February 2014, then February 2022. So it's a strange coincidence, and if you ask me, a purely poor coincidence. So 8 years of war for the east of Ukraine, for Ukraine itself. Vadim Ghida, you were present there, you were documenting this conflict when it was still what Russia is practicing a lot in the area, which is the frozen wars, the extended wars that could be always relit when it is necessary. I want to say that for the first time I was in Ukraine in 2012 for the European Football Championship, and I have worked in Donetsk, in Kharkiv, and to a certain extent I was affected, just like Răzvan was said, about the judgment of the former Soviet space. And when I got into Donetsk, I came down in a very modern airport. I participated in stadiums, to say frankly, I hadn't seen at that moment in Romania. Same situation in Kharkiv. But above that, it was the people's attitude, because I went there with a certain stress related to safety, related to all of the prejudgments that we all had. And it was never like that. My next visit was in 2014, just like Răzvan said. These are coincidences, although I don't believe in coincidences, after Olympic Games, just a little bit after they ended. And this time I couldn't come with an airplane, because that airport that just 2 years earlier I had seen, and I was actually quite impressed by it. Now it looked like it was from an Apocalypse Now type of movie, where prisoners of war were forced to recover the troops of their comrades who were trying to defend it. Related to what Andrei was mentioning earlier, solidarity is not just the responsibility of some restricted groups of people. Solidarity is from each and every one of us. Each and every one of us is, in my mind, an ambassador for solidarity or for peace. And in order for that to truly take place, just like sports is essential for the health of the mind, this is something that they just recently discovered, the Romans, in 2,000 plus years ago. Of course, essential for the health of the mind is information, the correct information. It is more and more difficult in these times that we are living right now to discern what is fair information, what is propaganda, as we call it now. And from my point of view, the most horrible effect of the information, dissemination of fake information, is not the polarization, it's not that some people will believe the wrong thing or they will be drawn into camps that they shouldn't be drawn into.
Pericolul informației false este
To me, the danger of misinformation is that many people who understand and who could participate turn passive because they don't know, they no longer know what to believe. Because if you look at all information and you try to select everything, you won't be able to take a stance, you won't be able to prevent it. There is no justification for aggression or for war. I don't think everybody doubts it. I don't think everybody believes that there is something on this earth that can be obtained only through aggression. But if we are not aware of it, if we are not actively engaged in denying aggression or refusing it, from the smaller scale to the larger scale, if we don't understand that we should provide proof of solidarity with the victims of the aggression, unfortunately, as I was saying, no matter how much we dream, conflicts keep on repeating, and I've ended up seeing them. So without this proof of solidarity, we cannot hope that this repetitive course of history can never change. I would love for us to be all connected to what's going on in Ukraine. I don't know if you noted, but the media interest in Ukraine decreased. If in the beginning everything was on the news, now news are less intense, but the war is more intense. People keep on dying on a daily basis. There's a lot of destruction, and to use yet another frozen phrase that a very wise person coined, it's only those of us who are very wise that see the end of the war because they die. But the war never ends. The war is there. It stays in all the people who suffered loss, destruction, and what else. Consequently, it must be over as soon as possible. But this cannot happen if we are acting passively. Thank you. Any questions? From your own experience. Sorry, we still have Anastasia. Anastasia, are you still online? No. If there are any questions around the room. Just a second, you need a microphone in order for your words to be heard. I'm sorry, without a microphone I cannot do the English translation.
Da, oricum v-am mulțumit și în ziua în care am
Thank you. The day I played,
așa, eram în blugi și în tricou, dar
I didn't have any football attire, but I managed to play a bit,
am fost invitat de
and I was glad
ambasada Ucrainei
that the embassy of Ukraine in Romania invited me. I keep close contact with it, and I was glad that I played for Ukraine. For 16 years I've been playing for Romania's national team. It was with great honor that I executed this task, and I had the privilege of being part of the national team and then captain of the national team. Please believe me, this is something that's very hard to describe in words. I mean, the fact that you represent your own country during world tournaments, let alone the fact that I had won a European Cup with an Ukrainian team. During the ceremony, I had the Romanian flag on my shoulders. When I played at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Cup, I played for the Ukrainians and I wore an Ukrainian flag over the shoulders, and I felt something else that's also very hard for me to describe. Once again, Ukraine is for me part of my life. It is part of me, part of my former life, part of my current life, and I will for sure be present during the following Ministry of Foreign Affairs Cup if I'm not in training, or anyhow we will invite Răzvan Raț. Unless you have any other questions, I'm going to give the floor to President Covaliu for a few closing remarks. I am nervous and I have been so, speaking about Ukraine and what it stands for. I think it's not per chance, as Răzvan was saying, that a lot of things are happening. Today we celebrate the birthday of the Minister of Sports in Ukraine, so Vladimir Gutsai is celebrating his birthday today. So many happy returns from me. The fact that he manages to keep Ukrainian athletes united, the fact that he manages to send these athletes to tournaments, the fact that he manages to show that through sports the Olympic flame is still kindled is purely extraordinary, and we have to also be mindful of it. Sports is very important in any society, no matter what times we have to sail through. Thank you. It's all I had to say. Thank you as well. With this, we conclude the second panel of our round table, and we move on to the awards to be given to all those participants in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Cup. But let me thank once again Anastasia Pitbalova, handball foot player, Răzvan Raț, a Romanian and Ukrainian football player, Florin Shari, a friend of our ministry and a representative of the Romanian Football Federation, and to thank also the journalist Vadim Ghidă. And now, since we've had Răzvan with us, I will invite him to go next to my colleagues in order to move to this symbolic moment. There are no winners or losers in this cup, and I take this opportunity to tell you that in May next year we are organizing a more serious cup at our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We will introduce several other sports for this tournament, and if everything is ready, let me announce the trophies and the prizes of this cup. We will most obviously start with football. The fair play prize to Rafael Garcia for Jimenez, Just for Fun is the name of the team. The best goalkeeper. And best players prize.
La câștigătorii competiției de fotbal,
We will now
pe locul 3,
move to the
echipa
winners
Peru,
of the
și am să
football
invit și
championship.
reprezentanții
Third place,
ministerului care au
Peru's
și jucat
team,
până la
and I
urmă
will
să se
invite
alăture
the representatives of the
ceremoniei.
ministry to join the
Miguel Melgar,
ceremony. So
Madrigal
Miguel
Moya Juan, Borsani Franco Maria, Rodriguez Fabian Andres, Fagio Monteo, Pancotto Cesar Pablo, Enrique Giuseppe, Tenase Florin, Petra Gabriel Alexandru, Rancia Marius Bogdan, Quiroga Sergio Felipe și Silvio Logulo. Felicitări! Felicitări! Pe locul 2, echipa reprezentativă a Ucrainei,
Second,
domnul Silu Sarenscu,
Ukrainian team.
Nekrasov Pavlo, Zlatin Alexandr, Mahon Roman, Frunze Valeri, Balica Oleg, Zubah Alexandr, Pricop George, Nesterenko Andri, Solonaru Cristian, Perju Teodor, Bărdaș Iulian Alexandru, Strizac Pavlo, Nehoda Iuri și Răzvan Raț. Ca să intre în poză. Felicitări!
Many congrats.
Și pentru că e competiție, pe
And
locul
because
1 echipa
it's a
Mae 1,
competition,
cu
first
Nicolae Comănescu, Tiberiu Ganea,
place,
Răzvan Neacșu, Bogdan Alan,
team
Daniel
number
Pena,
1.
Andrei Ștefan Ioja, Stelian Stancu, Adrian Lixandru, Alexandru Sârghe, Valentin Lupescu, Andrei Sârbulescu, Cosmin Andrei Dragomir, Răzvan Budrincă și Andrei Novak. Păi normal. Și ce meci au fost, ce meciuri. Felicitări! Continuăm cu celelalte sporturi.
And we will now continue with other sports, simple table tennis.
Locul 2, Marcu Dragoș. Locul 1,
Place, second place, third place, second place, and first place. Chess, Balika Oleg, third place. Second place, Jigla. First place, Nog Mihai. Field tennis, third place, Comonescu Nicolae. Second place, Moise Laurențiu. First place, Harvic Mihail Justinian.
Și la dublu,
double, Edward Josiper, I've seen it in hall.
continuăm locul 2.
We will continue now with the second place. Double.
Locul 2, Neacșu Mircea și
Second place, Neacșu Mircea and Aldea Bogdan.
Ați luptat ceva?
Să nu exagerăm.
Eu nu l-am văzut, dar... Pe el e dublu. Și locul 1 la dublu, Harvic Mihail Justinian și Moise Sorin
First place, Hartic Mihail Justinian and Moise Laurențiu.
Mihai Overachiever. Felicitări!
Congratulations to you all.
And last but not least, for golf, first place, Mr. Kitakawa Totsuo, Embassy of Japan. Felicitări. Thank you very much to all. And before we reconvene outside to share a glass and spend some time together in a spirit of solidarity and sport, lăsați-mă să fac ceea ce este obligatoriu în orice eveniment de acest tip.
Let me do what's mandatory in such events. Thank friends and partners. First of all, thank Mihai Covaliu, the president of the Romanian Olympic and Sports Committee, Mr. Boroi, the Secretary General of the Romanian Olympic Committee, all sports federations that supported us in organizing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Cup, the athletic, table tennis, I'm trying to name all of them, basketball, and I'm sure I forgot one, cycling, so without them, table tennis, yes, of course, and rugby. Thank you very much.
De asemenea, partenerilor
I would also like
care au
to
sprijinit
thank
evenimentul,
the
Aqua Carpatica,
partners that
Ursus Breweries,
supported
Terme
this event,
București
our
și
partners,
voluntarilor
Terme
care
București, and the
s-au
volunteers
implicat pe tot parcursul
that got
acestui eveniment. Și
engaged
lăsați-mă să le
throughout
mulțumesc și colegilor
this
mei,
event. And let me
Raluca,
thank also my
Adriana,
colleagues, Raluca,
Răzvan,
Adriana,
Anca,
Răzvan,
fără de
Anca.
care,
Without them,
și numai ei știu cât de
and
multă muncă este
they are
pentru
the only
o mică
ones who
cupă
know how much one needs to work in order to organize such a large event as this a small cup of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you all. Let's have a glass outside and see you next year. Thank you.